Hello. I'm the interviewer, John McGilvery. I'm with the Massachusetts Veterans Oral History Project. I'm at the Norwell, Massachusetts Council on Aging. It's Friday, April 28th, 2017, and it's 1:55 p.m. I am interviewing Francis Schulte, and it's where I get to ask Frank. Should I call you Frank or
Frank is the...
Well, Frank, I'm going to ask you your date of birth, please.
1725.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was actually born in an orphanage, or to a mother in Sioux City, Iowa, that was not married. All intentions were there, but it never went off. So she gave birth to me in a home for unwed mothers. And she got very sick, had to be quarantined at that area. And when she got well enough, she went to the Catholic Charities and asked if they would take me in that orphanage. It was patron saint of that orphanage was Saint Monica. So I lived there for 2 years. That was the limit, was 2 years from birth till 2. And then was transferred to St. Anthony's. Also, both of these were in Sioux City, Iowa, but St. Anthony's were older children. And then from there, I was adopted at 5 years old. Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
At 5 years old, and very fortunate. The people that adopted me were beautiful people. They were farmers, so I went from city slicker to farming in one short jump. And they raised me till I was 18 on the farm. I learned everything the farmers knew. We were quite successful, but as you may know by the date, it was right during the heart of Depression. And we also, this was in South Dakota, in a place called Mission Hill was where the farm was, and went to one of those one-room schoolhouses, no electricity, no, everything was bare minimum. And then went to Yankton High School and graduated. And when I graduated, I had my eye on getting into the service because my brother was already in the Coast Guard. And this was following Big Brother.
So, geez, Yankton.
Pretty famous.
That's what I'm thinking. I think both for sports and, I don't know, this.
Yankton was the center of the two states which were not states. And Yankton, well, I might take that back, but Yankton was the head of the government, seated government for the territory of North and South Dakota. And this was during the Lewis and Clark,
Right.
when they took over
Sure.
and explored all this land. And a lot of pretty famous people came out of Yankton. I think one of the famous would be Tom Brokaw.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And he graduated from Yankton after I graduated.
Well, that's probably why. He probably saw what a good job it did for you, and he wanted to follow in your footsteps.
And of course, a very famous name in Yankton was Lawrence Welk.
Oh, yeah, the champagne music.
But before that, he was a 5-piece orchestra, and was at a radio. He had his own radio show, and he lived in Yankton for a number of years.
Wow.
His wife, I think, was from Yankton.
Wow.
Of course, everybody relates him to North Dakota because that's how he got.
I relate him to a 1 and a 2.
Two, and that's right.
Yeah.
And he played some of my relations' weddings
Yeah.
out in the country, the Farmers Hall, they call them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. So, let me ask now, you've graduated from high school and it's time to go into the military, and you wanted to join the military because your brother had already joined, and
Yes, and
what year was this anyway?
1943. I
1943.
joined right after I got out of high school.
Okay, all right. And was there any pushback? I mean, did any of your family or relatives or friends say, don't do this?
No, a lot of them had served, as well as my father, in World War One.
Yeah.
Both sides of the family, the Schultes and the Karlovitzes, my adopted parents. And no, they were all, everybody was, I shouldn't say
Patriotic.
everybody, but very patriotic.
Yeah. Okay.
That sense was there.
So, you decided to join the Navy, and what made you decide upon the Navy?
I think because my adopted father was in the Navy. I have pictures of him with us boys together. And my brother Joseph, who was the other adopted, he was older than me. And he joined the Coast Guard, and a true hero in every sense of the word. And he died several years ago. He was older than me. He wanted a little brother, and my mother, adopted mother, couldn't have children. So they had adopted him when he was 6 weeks old from the same home that I was born at. And neither one of us knew it to this very day that we were in the same home. I didn't see my birth certificate until I was in my 60s. We flew out to Sioux City and petitioned a judge, and my wife was studying to be a lawyer at the time, so we got the document.
Wow.
So I had not only my brother to follow, but my dad, who was pure Navy in World War I. He served over in the European area. I mean, that's the ship took him to those ports.
Well, tell me, what was it like when you first joined? You know, tell me about leaving the house, leaving your home, your neighborhood, and going off to boot camp. What was that like?
Well, actually, it turned out to be a relief for me. Living as a farm boy on a farm, the hours along, pay was very short. And this was a new experience, and I was very much looking forward to going. I had that patriotic farmer kid attitude, and bring it on. I was ready physically and mentally. It was very easy. Boot camp was nothing to me, because I had worked so hard. And our sleeping, raising a farm that part of it was a log cabin in the beginning, and then they made it bigger and covered all what parts were log.
Was there much of adjustment having to mingle or interact with all these other people from different parts of the country?
No, that was one of the easiest things, because I think maybe even going back to my orphanage, I do remember some of the kids that I interacted with, and I was fortunate that I was able to do that. And that's a big thing in a boot camp.
Sure.
And I was involved in music from the time I was a little kid. So I was a singer, a little boy soprano. So they featured me. So I had met crowds and entertained. I was the Bobby Green of that. I don't know if you remember. Bobby Green was world famous, a boy soprano. And he was in the movies and everything in the early 30s and through that. So I was kind of, they set me up as that
Yeah.
kid that's going to follow this guy.
Yeah.
And it was a natural for me.
Oh.
So taking orders was easy because my dad was tough.
So where did you go to boot camp?
I went to Camp Perry, Virginia, which was named after Admiral Perry. And his wife, we were told, owned all that land. And somehow, when this all came about, the war, he was a natural with his land in Virginia. It was not too far from Williamsburg. And there's a lot of stories, you don't know what to believe and whatnot, but
Yeah.
that's how it all happened through the Perry,
Wow.
Admiral Perry.
Is he the one that went to the North Pole or Antarctica?
No, that is, I think, yeah, come to think of it, there was a Perry.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a discoverer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so
You're
just full
you're
of
right,
it. Yeah.
you're right.
So anyway, after boot camp, basic training, they would have sent you on for some type of additional training.
Yes, advanced.
Advanced training. And
We were shipped to Port Hueneme in California. Now, Port Hueneme, it's was strictly CB, and that was also an export place for anybody that was headed to the Pacific or to the Aleutian Islands. And that's where we did our basic and advanced training, you know, maneuvers and all that.
And as part of that, when you're doing advanced training for you, being with the Seabees, you had to learn how to use weapons and things like that, as well as construction equipment.
All of my training
Yeah.
was Marine.
Yeah.
All of my instructors, both at Camp Perry and also in Hueneme. So we'd go out maneuvers. All of our squad leaders were all Marine. And then when we went to the Pacific, I was attached to the 3rd Division Marines.
Okay.
They made the initial invasion.
All right. And what you guys would do, I mean, because there was back then in the Pacific, what the Marines were doing, and you being attached to them, was a lot of island hopping. So you'd
Perfect.
be going, hit an island, take it over, build an airfield, whatever,
Exactly.
harbors where they could, you know.
And that's exactly how it worked. We didn't want the whole island. Why waste your time? We secured what we initially were told to do and kept it that way. We put a perimeter in and then built that up to handle future troops that were going through as a warehouse, you know, for food, ammunition. And the airstrips, I suppose, eventually just deteriorated.
Yeah.
But we had the Torquina strip, which was a fighter strip. That's where our fighter planes went into. And then Piva was the big bomber strip. And that's where the 17s came in and the 24s and the.
Wow. And it seems like, from what I've been reading, your unit wound up a lot working under General MacArthur, I think?
No, General MacArthur was floating around.
Yeah.
He escaped Corregidor, I think with the family,
Right.
and went to Australia or New Zealand.
Right.
Then came back and made his big push
In the Philippines.
at
Right.
Leahy Gulf.
Right.
And that was General, but before he made that invasion, he was secured with like 200,000 soldiers guarding him
Right.
off of Hollandia, New Guinea, because I was on Hollandia,
Yeah.
and that's where he was bivouacked.
Yeah.
General MacArthur was a real perfect soldier. He had the looks, he had everything, but the hero of that whole thing was General Wainwright.
Well, he wound up, he's the one that got captured and.
Sure, he took the fall.
Right.
And then when he was up for the Medal of Honor, do you know who opposed that?
I believe it was General MacArthur.
It was. And that's in the book by Riley, which I just bought not too long ago. And I didn't realize that had happened.
Yeah, well, Admiral Nimitz, I think, is the one. I think they broke into two different sections, and I think
Yes.
General MacArthur took one, and Admiral Nimitz took the other, I believe.
Then there's another admiral besides Nimitz. They were both about the same caliber. I can't think of his name right now.
Admiral Halsey was the one that I think sort of worked under
Yeah.
Nimitz, and he was
Yeah.
the one out in I would say the field, but he was the operational part of it, and so a lot of the Marines were working under Nimitz and Halsey and doing the island hopping.
We had Admiral Kincaid.
Kincaid, yeah.
And General MacArthur did not like the Seabees. We found that out.
How come?
There was something there, maybe a
Yeah.
personality or something. I don't know.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, it seems to me that you and the Marines did quite a bit in the Solomons, and were you on Guadalcanal by any chance?
We stopped at a little island called Tulagi,
Yeah.
which was right off of Torpedo Junction, and from there you could see Guadalcanal.
Sure.
We never touched foot on the canal.
No.
Their purpose was, now the canal was secured, get up. So then Tulagi was the next one that got it, and then they wanted more airspace,
Sure.
more airports.
Well, that's where they stemmed the Japanese tide there, and started turning things
That's
around.
exactly where it started.
So we owe a lot to the.
And Kennedy was further up in the Solomons.
That's right, where his
PT
PT 109 got
109.
smashed. Well, I'm not here to talk about Kennedy, but I am here to continue on with you and
Sure.
how you've been doing. So, anyway, we've gone through boot camp and what's happened there, and what happened in the military, and one of the things I always ask is, while you're in the military, what did you do for entertainment? I mean,
Oh, very good.
you know,
I was fortunate enough to be on a list of people they would call when the big entertainers came into the islands. And one particular one I met was Bob Hope.
wow,
We would be the warm-up, like the old vaudeville days.
yeah,
We would be the warm-up act. It'd be 4 or 5 acts, and they were all men because we had no women on the island. And we had like an agency. They would put a call out, like they do in Boston, for singers, jugglers, whatever, and then we'd come together, rehearse, and get ready. That was our big thing. And of course, I met many smaller acts, like Bob Crosby came in, Bing Crosby's brother, and there were other famous names. But Bob Hope was the coup de grace. He was it. Francis Langford was his main singer. But I don't want to get away from your question. We would play, we made, being CBs, we made a ball field, and right across the ball field was bivouac was the 3rd Division Marines, and we would
Play.
interact,
Yeah.
or we'd go to the beach and go out on a boat, and, and the beaches were beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And you look at the beach and you look towards the United States and say, I wonder if I'll ever get back there. It was a funny feeling.
Mm.
But time went so fast,
Wow. Well, after the entertainment and everything, when you're in the military, you're supposed to get leave, but when you're overseas and you're on an island, I don't perceive you getting any leave time,
Oh, no,
Did you ever get any
No.
leave time?
never.
Never.
And New Zealand
Yeah.
was the big leave place to go. New Zealand and Australia, but
Yeah.
in particular New Zealand.
Yeah.
No, the Marines got it because they'd come out of those combat situations. And if we had combat, our combat would be a month and a half, and then protect your perimeter. But the Marines, they were there, and so was the Army. And on our island, it was the Americal Division from the Midwest, National Guard, and they kind of blew it. Their commander made a deal with the Japanese commander and took off about a week's time, made a deal. The Japanese didn't honor the deal, and the Americal got a year's extension on their overseas leave.
Geez, I never heard of that.
Yeah. You check into the archives, it'll come up.
I will. That's
Yeah,
That's interesting.
because
Boy.
it was sad, and it was both the Japanese and the Americans were tired. Hey, let's take a couple days off, and all of a sudden, boom! It was the dumbest thing.
Yeah.
And who did they call? The Marines were getting aboard ship to go to the next island, and the Marines had to come back in and take those positions over.
Yeah.
There was a lot of,
There's always been some.
and I've talked to Americal guys since, and they knew the story. They buried it.
I'm gonna look that up. Thank you for
Yeah, I
telling me.
don't know where yeah, be very interesting.
Let me ask a couple of questions here. One would be, what would be one of your most memorable experiences in the military? And two, what would be one of your most humorous experiences in the military?
Well, I think the most memorable was boarding ship to go over to the Island X, was what they called it at that time. The propaganda was pretty heavy, and that I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been on a ship, nothing bigger than a rowboat, and to go off, set sail from America, which was peaceable. It was very peaceful, and not knowing what was going to come up. And the first thing that I remember was an airplane. We got an alert to position, gun position. It was a merchant marine ship, and we handled some of the guns. And this plane alert. And when this plane flew over, we saw the star, and everybody cheered. It was on patrol. It was off one of the islands. We were pretty much deep. And then the next occasion was when we got an alert for a submarine attack, and it was right at dusk. And that sunk in as reality. This was it. What was the other question?
Well,
Continue.
juxtaposing that, I'm wondering what was one of your most humorous experiences?
Well, I would say the entertainers that came to the island, especially Bob,
Bob Hope.
just an icon.
Yeah.
Nobody could compare with him.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of young people that had names stateside, but none of us knew who they were. And then people like Bob Hope would bring along a comedian to expose him to,
Right.
and the joy that the guys had. And we did have movies too. We, being Seabees, we
Yeah.
put up a movie. We had
Screens and-
logs,
yeah.
and you didn't know who you were sitting with. And once in a while, the Japanese would infiltrate and actually be sitting next to you watching a movie.
I always thought that was a myth, you know?
No,
No?
and also chow line. They'd get into the chow line, they'd get a poncho just like we wore. And most of us had malaria, a lot of us, I had it very bad. And you turn yellow from the medicine, I forget the name of the medicine. And raining, coming down, and sloppy, and just get in. It wasn't, we didn't eat in a nice dining hall with contract food like they do today. It was our own guys. And
Right.
you just got into the chow line, shoved
Right.
your thing out, and plump, and that was it. You go and try to get some shelter. And once in a while, one of those buggers would slip in.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah, and they did. They would even crawl up trees to watch the movie.
Jeez. Well, who can blame them?
No,
Now, let me ask something. Is the war ends and you come back to the States, your enlistment is getting over with, time for you to get separated and discharged.
civvies.
What was that like? You know you're getting out. What was the day like that you got out of the Navy?
Well, in one way, I kind of felt sorry for the people that were in charge of us. We'd all had many experiences, and all of a sudden now we're quarantined from this, don't go here, blah blah blah. But I was fortunate enough to get with the SPs,
Yeah.
and I would go with a real SP, a trained naval SP, shore patrol. So that kind of was a diversion, but otherwise my problem was I was single, and we got out of the Navy, as maybe Marines too, with points. You had to have so many points before you get out. So I think I needed something like 4 points. So they put me from Great Lakes, they shipped me to Omaha, Nebraska, and were warehousing me. I'd just report in to the Navy people, and they'd check me out, and I'd go out and go to a movie or whatever, and then come back and get my dinner, and I just played it. It was
Right.
sad, but the point system really hurt. You could have a lot of time in the Navy, but it didn't mean anything because you were the bottom. If you were single,
Yeah.
that's where you were. The guys with a child or so, especially in the Seabees, because most of them were older men.
Right.
And but you just took your surroundings and did the best you could.
Well,
But at least I got to the. I'm trying to think of the name. I just mentioned it. It was a naval base at Great Lakes, Illinois. I can't think of the Great Lakes.
Great Lakes.
Great Lake. And you could go there, but you had a pull duty. You know, you do wherever they assign you to, and you do it, you know.
But now, the day that you got out, it finally came, and you get out, you went home, back to the
Yes.
farm?
No, the farm was sold. Mother and Dad could not, they had no help.
Uh,
Two little orphan boys grow up and make awful good little workers.
yeah,
They needed us as much as we needed them.
okay,
And there was a sort of what you call a complimentary payoff.
yeah,
So they both had moved into town and retired. Dad worked a while until he got to a certain age. But other than that, you prepared for a job, the first thing. And my dad knew people, and the first thing I did when I got home, and I lived with them and paid my board and rent, they bought a duplex house. And Dad says, I can get you a job. Well, jobs were scarce when I got out. And you'd take anything, but I was a carpenter's mate. I'll do carpentry. And I was lucky enough to get a job. But now, this is the strange part. I had theater in the back of my mind. I wanted to go to college and study music. And one of my favorite orchestras was Boston Symphony under Kuzovitsky, and the big boy with the Boston Pops, Fiedler. I wanted the New England Conservatory of Music, and darn it, I went there from South Dakota. And it was all through a Navy chaplain, Father Barney Boylan, who was a Jesuit priest. He took me, he said, I worked with him in the Philippines trying to rehab the place. I got my own material, I got an okay from my commanding officer. So he said, when you get out of the Navy, he says, I'm gonna contact you. He says, I'm being shipped back to Lenox, Massachusetts.
yeah,
No, Cranwell Prep School.
yeah.
And I took over as carpenter there, as a leader of
It's
the,
a beautiful place out there.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Bill Flynn,
yeah.
athletic director, Boston College.
Boston College, yeah,
I see they got a new athletic director.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Cranwell, beautiful spot out there, and then you got Tanglewood right down the
There we
road,
go.
you know.
It just like
Yeah,
that. And Barney Boylan's private secretary, a male person,
right,
was very involved with music. When he found I was interested in music, the doors just opened up. Boston opened up. So the first place I went to stay, to live, was at St. Cecilia's in the Back Bay. The old Monsignor, there were three brothers that were Monsignors, Phelan. I stayed there and I went to the conservatory singing, and I did all of their masses, you know, for the dead and all that.
right.
$3 a head. I do as many as 5 on a good day, and join their choir.
Good day for you, not so good
Well,
for them.
that $3 did add
Yeah.
up, but then finally, then I got into weddings where the money was
Yeah.
big, and they kept giving me $3. They were in charge of the envelope, and I said, "Wait a minute, I charge $15, and what am I getting here?" So there was a little passing the way. I was ready.
Yeah. Wow.
So the church has been a big part of my life.
Sure. Being from infancy through into your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every big step I made, getting into the profession area and going, was always a priest involved. And then I became director of the choir out in West Roxbury, Holy Name, and took their whole music department. I was there for 20 years. But I worked in the daytime. I mean,
Sure.
there was not enough money there. So, yeah, Mike, I've been busy.
It's fascinating, yeah, I'll tell you. You
Yeah.
know, Well, let me ask, I got to wrap up with a couple of questions here, and the one that I have to ask is, probably should be asking how did the church influence you, but really what I have to ask is how do you think that the military has affected your life in general?
Oh, I definitely, but the funniest part of it is the man that became my father had the greatest effect on me as a person, being he was from the Navy himself, World War I, as I mentioned. But his discipline was extreme, extreme. And he laced it out. He went right down the line and says, this is what you do, as long as you're under my roof. So the military, when I went to boot camp, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Keep your nose clean, and that'll go a long way. But the biggest thing was discipline. Whatever you do in life, your mind, your heart, your soul is discipline. And that followed through, you know. So the military really, outside of the patriotic, that was the big thing, you know.
Well, let me ask now, is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
No, I think we did pretty darn good.
Okay. Well, listen, Frank, I want to thank you for taking part in the Massachusetts Veterans Oral History Project and sharing your reflections. Also want to thank you for your service to our country and to your community and to our Commonwealth. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My pleasure.